Rabotai, in Siman Kuf Nun Chet in Halacha Dalet, there is a halacha that is brought down that a lot of people unfortunately overlook this halacha. I guess not because they want to, I guess maybe because people are ignorant about this halacha, or they take it very lightly in their eyes, and they think that the minhag is not to do so, as we will see, but I want to try to show you here of the importance of actually doing it. This halacha is going on that if a person eats a food which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids, like we'll see, a person is required to wash his hands like he does for bread, but without a bracha. Now I know you guys are thinking probably to wash your hands for bread, meaning you wash yours 3 times on the right hand, and then 3 times on the left hand. Now that is all good according to the Zohar, the way we actually wash today. But, Rabotai, that's meaning according to Kabbalah, but mi'ikar hadin halachically. If a person is pouring at one time and he's able to make his whole hand wet at one time, which we actually do today because we have very big cups, you do not need to, mi'ikar hadin, Rabotai, halachically speaking, you do not need to pour 3 times in your hand the water in order to be able to say Anta Yadayim for the bread meal. 1 time will be enough. However, Rabotai, we do it 3 times. We go l'chumra. We try to cover the opinion also kabbalistically that you should do it 3 times. But halakhically speaking, if you are pouring more than 3 ounces on one shot onto your right hand, and then 1 shot 3 ounces onto your left hand, you are no longer required to wash your hand a 2nd or 3rd time. All that is l'chumra. Rabotai, there's also a lot of details. I just want to try to explain to you why I say this. Because a lot of times a person, when he's in the middle of a bread meal, he can get up and go use the bathroom, or he can put on his shoes, and meaning touch the shoes, or he can change the child's diaper, or he can pick his nose, pick his ears, or he can touch one of the covered places of the body, not realizing that when he wants to eat now, it is not enough for him just to wash his hands like he does for hygiene purposes, but he has to rewash his hands like he would do for bread. Now there's a machlok with a bracha, without a bracha. During the weekday we'll tell you without a bracha, during Shabbat we'll tell you with a bracha, in order to be able to add to 100 berachot, etc. Rabotai. There's many details into this halakha, but I'm trying to bring out over here a point that when you're sitting back down and you want to wash your hands for the bread, because you're in the middle of a meal, you have to understand a lot of times a person doesn't want to do it. Why do I have to wash my hands 3 times? So therefore you could use this halakha of the Shulchan Aruch to pour. Say you have a cup, you pour half of the cup, you pour onto your hand 1 time, another half you pour onto your left hand. Zehu, that's it. You go back, you sit down and you eat your bread. So people have to know, Rabotai, that halakhically speaking, if a person washes 1 time, you're fine. 3 times is l'chumra. Again, we are speaking specifically over 3 ounces, meaning if there's more than 3 ounces in the cup that is being poured onto your hands. In any event, Rabotai, I want to just try to bring you down a point over here, because why am I telling you this? Because when it comes for one of the 7 liquids, if a person wants to wash his hands, you do not necessarily need to do it 3 times. 1 time is going to be enough, as I explained. So the Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Kuf Nun Chet, Halacha Daled, Im ochel davar shitibel be'echad mishir mashkin. If a person is eating a food which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids, which is simanam, Shesimanam yad shachad dam, that the siman, the signs are to be able to remember the 7 liquids. It's yad, literally hand, shachat, to slaughter, dam, blood. So if you take yud stands for wine, dalet, dvash stands for honey, shin stands for shemen, Mishabur says shemen zayit, meaning olive oil, ches stands for chalav, milk, tet stands for dew, Dalid stands for dam, literally blood, lolin. If a person has to eat food that was dipped into blood for health reasons, lolin, or whatever it might be. Mem, water, mime. Mem, water, mime. Rabotai, we need to understand it like this. The Shulchan Aruch says that if a person is eating a food which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids, which we just mentioned, yad, shachat, adam, let's just go for argument's sake with milk or water or olive oil. A lot of times we have these lettuce salads that our wives put olive oil on top, or even wine on top. And if you're going to eat it with your hand now, you need to wash your hands like you do for the bread meal, just without a bracha. Or if a person wants to dip a chocolate chip cookie into milk, he has to once again wash his hands like you do for the bread meal, but without a baracha, etc. Rabotai, the Shulchan Aruch continues and he says, "V'lo nitnagev," right, and it was not dried. V'afilu en yadav nigod b'makam mashke. Even though you're not going to touch the liquid, you might be dipping a cucumber or let's say a cookie into milk. You're not going to touch the liquid. Tzarich nitila below bracha. You need to wash your hands like you do for the bread meal, just without a bracha. V'afilu en matbil rak rosh hayarik o pari. Afilu hachi yito below bracha. The Rama adds, even if you're only going to dip the tip of a vegetable or the tip of a fruit, like we do, dip the apple in the honey, like we do with the apple and the honey, Rabotai. Nevertheless, the Rama says you have to wash your hands, even in such a scenario, without a bracha. Again, the Mishnah verse says because we are afraid you're going to come into contact with the water by accident, dipping the whole thing inside. In any event, Rabotai, I just want to try to bring down over here, like we started, that there is a very big misconception that when it comes to one of the 7 liquids, a lot of us think, unfortunately, it's a minhag not to do it, either because we don't know, either because people don't do it. I don't know, Rabotai. Whatever the reason might be, I would like to read for you the language of the Mishnah Berurah Siman Kuv Nun Chet Sivkat and Chav. He says like this: the reason why you don't have to wash, Michaela, the reason why you don't have to say bracha, Ki yesh miktzat harishonim disavare, because you have a few rishonim that they hold. שלא יצריכו חכמים להציל ידיים לדבר שטיפלו במשהו אלא במהם שהיו אוכלים בטהרה. You have a few rishonim that hold that you do not need to wash your hands for a food which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids. It was only required in their days when they used to eat their foods in purity. But which nowadays everybody has the impurity of the dead on them. So therefore you don't have to wash your hands when you're eating something which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids. Therefore he says, Lo yivarech al yadayim. Therefore he says one should not bless on this washing of the hands. That we know the rule that whenever you have a doubt, especially over here with the brachot only from the rabbis, we're going to tell you one should be lenient. Meaning and not to bless. He says that the Magen Avraham brings in the name of the Lechem Chamudot, and he says that the world is accustomed Shaloli tol v'yesh lahem al mashi yismichu. Rabotai, listen to this carefully. He says over the Magen Avraham in the name of the Lechem Chamudot, says the minhag, the custom of the world, is not to wash your hands for a food which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids, like was mentioned earlier, and they have what to rely on. He says on the few Rishon that we mentioned above. However, he says, a lot of achronim that were very stringent in this thing, and they wrote that the main rule, the main halakha stands with the majority of the poskim. He says that Allah is speaking about a person needs to wash his hands from the halakhic standpoint, and not like the minhag says. Rabotai, the Ber Heitiv in Seif Katan Yur Aleph says over here, in the name of Matei Yosef, what happens if you have a person who wants to be lenient? This is what I want to actually touch upon, and I want to just try to elaborate on this. Matei Yosef, Simon Yudchet Katav, in Matei Yosef and Simon Yudchet he wrote, anybody who's lenient in not washing his hands for one of the foods which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids, he isn't the rule for one who degrades the washing of the hands. That he'll be uprooted from this world, and he's obligated to be put into excommunication, even though not by bedding, because we don't have that today technically, meaning it's a whole process, but in Shamayim he's chayav nidui. Al-Ken, therefore he says, Yirish Shamayim Mizaher, therefore he says the God-fearing person has to be careful, Bidavar in the thing, meaning not to eat something which was wet. Again, Rabotai, just as a note, if you dry it, you could eat it, no problem. He says, do not be concerned, do not pay attention to this wicked minhag of not washing our hands. Now, Rabotai, why am I saying this? Because a lot of times when people attend bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvah, yeshua, whatever it might be, weddings, and they want to eat things on the table, and they say to themselves, why we have to wash? So I'll give you a good reason why you have to wash. A lot of times you are eating pickles, which are pickled, or cucumbers which were washed, tomatoes, etc. And that is a problem. If you're not going to dry them, you need to wash your hands for bread anyway, meaning like you wash for bread, just without a bracha, so might as well go wash for bread and be yotze with everything, and have the mitzvah of the mitzvah, sudah mitzvah, for the bar mitzvah, or the brit milah, or the wedding, whatever the situation might be. But a lot of us want to try to come out of the mitzvah, and we don't want to really do it, or either because we're just not in the mood, or because we're lazy. But we need to realize that no matter what, if you're going to eat now fish, which was dipped into water, you need to get up again and wash your hands. Or carp, which was dipped into water, you need to get up and wash your hands. And a lot of times people stumble in this. Sometimes you have people do l'chaim, and they give him a nice cucumber which is wet, or a pickled which is wet, or anything like that. But you got to be very careful, knowing that you don't make the other person do naver by eating food which was dipped into one of the 7 liquids, and he didn't wash his hands. Now, Rabbi said, I want to read for you in Simon Kuf Tunechet, in the following halacha, in Seif Ted, just to show you that this is not something that is his opinion, but also there is a whole halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, how a person has to be careful when it comes for washing for the bread. The Shulchan Aruch says that tzarich lizaher b'nitzei yadayim, a person needs to be careful in the washing of the hands. Why? Shekol mizalzel b'nitzilat yadayim, anybody who belittles the washing of the hands, chayav nidui, once again, that same language, he is obligated to be put into excommunication. And he's going to come to become poor. And he's going to be uprooted from this world. Now, Rabotai, according to the Matei Yosef, he says the same rule applies not only for the bread meal, but also it applies for one of the 7 liquids. That means if you have a person that he wants to eat bread without washing his hands, he's belittling the Nitzay Yadayim. Or, I saw another Acharon right, people a lot of times they wash their hands, but they're not careful, they don't wash it the proper way. A lot of times if you pay attention, when you wash, if you take a cup and you wash on your hand, the water might be going on all your hands, Rabotai. But you have to remember, between the fingers it's not going. It's a very big problem. Over here it's not going. It's a very big problem. Because even if you pour 3 times on each hand, and then when you're going to touch the makom where it was not washed, which is tuma, automatically your hands become tameh, and the bracha is a bracha levatala. So besides not washing your hands the proper way, you're also saying berachot in vain. In any event, Rabotai, we need to take into consideration of the importance of making sure that when we are washing our hands, whether it's for one of the 7 liquids, or whether it's for the bread meal, if a person wants to just be very cautious, make sure you give some space between the fingers, and when you wash, keep on turning your arm, so this way you are able to go all around your arm, on both of them, Rabotai, and this way you will not going to have a problem. Rub it 3 times against each other, then raise your hand right above the left, and say the bracha al yadam. Again, this is for the bread. The same thing is going to apply for the washing of the hands for the liquids, but without a bracha, like we mentioned in the shur. Have a great night. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen. Amen.